Unexpected Revelations. The annual Hargrove Industries Gala was in full swing, the hotel ballroom transformed into a glittering showcase of success. Richard Hargrove, founder and CEO, stood at the edge of the dance floor, nursing a glass of scotch while surveying his corporate kingdom with quiet satisfaction. "Mr. Hargrove, the Henderson contract files are ready for your review before Monday's meeting," said a familiar voice beside him. Richard turned to see Vanessa Powell, his executive assistant of 7 years, holding a tablet. Even at a celebration, her efficiency remained impeccable. "Vanessa, it's past 11 on a Friday night," Richard said with a small smile. "Can't the Henderson deal wait until morning? You specifically asked for the numbers before the weekend," she reminded him, her dark eyes meeting his briefly before returning to the screen. Richard sighed. At 45, he had built Hargrove Industries from a small consulting firm into a market leader. Success had come at a cost. His first marriage, countless missed dinners with his current wife Deborah, and the persistent tension in his shoulders that no amount of physical therapy seemed to fix. "You're right, as always," he conceded, taking the tablet. "What would I do without you?" The question hung in the air longer than intended. For a moment, something shifted in Vanessa's expression, a flicker of something beyond professional courtesy that vanished so quickly, Richard wondered if he had imagined it. Across the room, board director Thomas Fleming raised his glass in Richard's direction. "A toast to our fearless leader," he called out, his voice carrying across the room. 10 consecutive quarters of growth deserves recognition. Applause erupted as Richard reluctantly made his way to the center of the room. Vanessa stepped back, blending into the crowd of employees. "Success isn't built by one person," Richard said after the cheers subsided. "It's built by a team that refuses to accept anything less than excellence. You all embody that spirit every day." The speech continued with practiced humility, but Richard found his attention repeatedly drawn to Vanessa standing near the bar. The soft blue dress she wore was a departure from her usual tailored suits, revealing a woman he realized he knew professionally, but perhaps not personally at all. Later, as the evening wound down, Richard found himself on the terrace seeking fresh air. The city lights spread before him like a reflection of the stars above. "Beautiful view," Vanessa said, appearing beside him. She handed him a fresh drink. "Thank you." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a momentary contact that sent an unexpected current through him, not just for the drink, for everything. "The company wouldn't be where it is without you." Vanessa looked genuinely surprised. "That's generous of you to say." "It's the truth." Richard loosened his tie. 7 years, and I've never properly acknowledged how vital you've been." "We make a good team," she said softly. Something about the night, perhaps the celebration, the drinks, or the rare moment of quiet honesty between them, shifted the atmosphere. Richard turned toward her, intending to say something about their professional rapport, but found himself studying the curve of her smile instead. Neither could later say who moved first. Perhaps they both did. But suddenly, impossibly, they were kissing, a brief electric moment of connection before reality crashed back. They separated instantly, equally shocked. Richard stepped back, apology forming on his lips, while Vanessa's professional mask slipped back into place with practiced efficiency. She began. "That was completely," he said simultaneously. From the doorway came the sound of breaking glass. They turned to see Thomas Fleming standing frozen, an empty champagne flute shattered at his feet and an expression of stunned disbelief on his face. The secret was out before it had even fully formed: office politics. The Monday following the gala, Hargrove Industries hummed with whispers. Richard arrived earlier than usual, hoping to minimize encounters in the lobby, but the subtle shifts in behavior were unmistakable. Conversations that halted when he approached, meaningful glances exchanged between colleagues. "Morning, Richard," Jonathan Mercer said, materializing beside the elevator with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. As vice president of operations, Jonathan had made no secret of his ambition to climb higher. "Quite a party Friday, wasn't it?" Richard maintained his composure. "Productive morning so far, Jonathan?" "Always." Jonathan adjusted his designer tie. "Though I imagine your productivity might be complicated today." Before Richard could respond, the elevator doors opened. Inside stood Vanessa, her expression carefully neutral as she clutched a portfolio to her chest. The three rode in suffocating silence to the executive floor. In his office, Richard found a message from Deborah. Dinner tonight? We need to talk. The simple text carried ominous weight. A knock on his door revealed Thomas Fleming, who closed it firmly behind him. "This is delicate, Richard," Thomas began without preamble. "The board values your leadership, but your personal conduct—" "It was a momentary lapse," Richard interrupted. "Nothing more," Thomas sighed. "The Henderson Group called this morning. They're reconsidering our partnership in light of concerning rumors about leadership stability. Whatever happened or didn't happen, perception is reality in our business." Across the building, Vanessa faced her own interrogation from Pamela Winters, the razor-sharp HR director. "I've received 3 separate reports about inappropriate conduct between you and Mr. Hargrove," Pamela said, sliding a formal complaint form across her desk. "I need your statement." Vanessa maintained her composure. "A momentary misunderstanding, nothing more." "Broderick Partners called," Pamela countered. "They're offering you a senior position." Interesting timing. Vanessa's surprise was genuine. She'd interviewed with the rival firm months ago but declined further discussions. "I haven't spoken with them recently," she said carefully. "They seem to think otherwise." Pamela leaned forward. "Whatever game you're playing, remember that harassment claims cut both ways." By afternoon, the situation deteriorated further. Richard's wife arrived unannounced, her tight smile failing to mask her anger as she swept past reception. "Deborah," Richard said, rising from his desk. "I thought we were meeting tonight." "Clara Thompson called me," Deborah replied, referring to a board member's wife. "She thought I should know what everyone is discussing at lunch today." Meanwhile, Jonathan Mercer invited Vanessa to coffee, ostensibly to offer support, but his agenda quickly emerged. "Richard's position is precarious," he said, stirring his latte. "When leadership changes, those closely associated with the previous regime often find themselves adrift." "I appreciate your concern," Vanessa replied evenly. "I could ensure you maintain your position," Jonathan continued, "perhaps with added responsibilities. I just need to understand exactly what happened Friday night." As day turned to evening, Richard sat alone in his office, staring at financial projections that couldn't hold his attention. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Evidence of your indiscretion available. $250K ensures it remains private." Down the hall, Vanessa cleared her desk, placing personal items into a box while contemplating the job offer she'd just received via email from Broderick Partners, with a substantial salary increase and immediate start date. Neither realized that Jonathan Mercer was working late, carefully constructing separate narratives for key board members, positioning himself as the stable alternative to a compromised CEO. Difficult decisions. Richard stared at the blackmail message, his finger hovering over the delete button. 25 years of building his reputation, and now everything hung by a thread because of one impulsive moment. His office door opened as Deborah entered, her expression softening slightly at his obvious distress. "I canceled our dinner reservation," she said, setting her purse down. "I thought we should talk here instead." Richard nodded, turning his phone face down. "Deborah, what happened wasn't—" "Save it," she interrupted, not unkindly. "This isn't about a kiss, Richard. It's about years of putting this company before everything else. Before me, before us." Across town, Vanessa sat at her kitchen table while her sister Grace paced angrily. "You need to file a complaint," Grace insisted. "He's the CEO, the power dynamic alone—" "Oh, it wasn't like that," Vanessa interrupted. "It was mutual and complicated. Mom gave up everything for a workplace romance," Grace reminded her. "Ended up a single mother with 2 kids and no career. Is that what you want?" Vanessa's phone chimed with a text from her mother. "Coming to town tomorrow. We need to discuss your situation." The next morning, Richard arrived to find Eleanor Walsh, the company's founder and his longtime mentor, waiting in his office. At 72, Eleanor had stepped back from daily operations but retained significant influence. "The Henderson Group is threatening to pull their $40 million contract," she said without greeting. "Thomas called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow." Richard nodded grimly. "Jonathan's already campaigning for my position." "This isn't about a kiss," Eleanor said, echoing Deborah's words. "It's about whether you still have the judgment this company needs." When Vanessa arrived, she found her office access revoked. Security escorted her to HR, where Pamela waited with severance papers. "This protects everyone," Pamela explained. 6 months' salary in exchange for your discretion and resignation. Meanwhile, the Henderson Group's CEO, Patricia Henderson, met with Richard directly. I don't care about your personal life, Patricia said bluntly, but I need to know if you're still the steady hand we're investing in. Richard found himself at a crossroads. I've never been more certain of my commitment to this company's success, he answered. But I'm reassessing how that success is defined. That afternoon, Richard made 3 consequential calls. First to his lawyer about the blackmail attempt, second to the board requesting a specific agenda item be added to tomorrow's emergency meeting, and third to Vanessa. I won't ask you to return, he said when she answered. But there's something you should know before you make any decisions about Broderick Partners. Later, as Richard cleaned out his desk, a precautionary measure before tomorrow's potential ousting, he discovered a file Vanessa had prepared months earlier. Contingency plans for company restructuring, including a detailed analysis of Jonathan's division, showing systematic credit-taking for others' work, and questionable client billing practices. Across the city, Vanessa sat in a cafe facing Marcus Broderick himself. We've admired your work for years, Marcus said smoothly, though recent events accelerated our timeline. Recent events that you seem remarkably well informed about, Vanessa noted. Marcus smiled thinly. We have mutual connections. Jonathan Mercer speaks highly of your adaptability. The pieces suddenly aligned in Vanessa's mind. Jonathan's scheming extended beyond Hargrove Industries. The job offer, the rumors, even the blackmail attempt all connected. As evening fell, 3 separate individuals made decisive choices that would reshape Hargrove Industries forever. Corporate fallout. The boardroom crackled with tension as 13 members of Hargrove Industries leadership assembled. Jonathan Mercer sat with practiced nonchalance, occasionally checking his watch. Thomas Fleming shuffled papers nervously while Eleanor Walsh observed everyone with shrewd calculation. Richard entered last, surprising everyone by bringing Patricia Henderson and 2 unfamiliar men in suits. Before we begin, Richard announced, I'd like to introduce Special Agents Donovan and Martinez from the Financial Crimes Unit. Jonathan's composed facade cracked slightly. Is this some kind of joke? 3 months ago, Richard continued, discrepancies in our billing systems triggered an internal audit. What began as accounting concerns revealed a pattern of client information being leaked to competitors, specifically to Broderick Partners. The agents distributed documents as Richard spoke. Ms. Powell discovered the breach and, at my request, maintained absolute secrecy while we worked with authorities to identify the source. Thomas Fleming looked bewildered. What does this have to do with your indiscretion? There was no indiscretion, Patricia Henderson interjected. What you witnessed was staged. A calculated move to smoke out the corporate spy we suspected had infiltrated your executive team. Jonathan stood abruptly. This is absurd. You can't possibly expect anyone to believe we have the evidence, Mr. Mercer, Agent Donovan stated flatly, including transfers to offshore accounts and recorded conversations with Marcus Broderick discussing the staged incident at the gala. As Jonathan was escorted from the building, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence. The kiss was planned? Thomas finally asked. Richard exchanged glances with Eleanor. The plan was for Vanessa to whisper urgent information about the investigation. The kiss was improvised, across town. Vanessa sat in Marcus Broderick's office, a hidden recording device capturing his increasingly incriminating admissions. Jonathan assured me you were ambitious enough to understand practical business realities, Marcus said, sliding a contract toward her. Information flows where profit dictates. Nothing personal. And the blackmail attempt against Richard? Vanessa asked carefully. Marcus waved dismissively. A separate contractor. Crude but effective. When federal agents entered moments later, Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to cold fury. You've made a serious mistake, he warned Vanessa. No, she replied calmly. For the first time in months, I'm certain I haven't. By evening, Hargrove Industries faced a different crisis, managing the PR fallout from a corporate espionage scandal. Richard stood at his office window watching the sunset paint the skyline in golds and purples. His phone chimed with a message from Deborah. Dinner at home tonight. We still need to talk. Richard smiled faintly. The conversation wouldn't be easy, but at least it would be honest. Eleanor joined him at the window. "The board has unanimously voted to retain you as CEO," she informed him, though several members suggested a more conventional approach to corporate security in the future. "Noted," Richard said. "And Vanessa?" Eleanor asked. Richard hesitated. "That's enough complicated." "Life generally is," Eleanor observed. "The question is whether you're finally ready to address the complications instead of hiding behind this company." As she left, Richard stared at his reflection in the darkening glass. For years, Hargrove Industries had been his shield against deeper questions about what he truly wanted. Now that shield had cracked, forcing him to confront what lay beneath. New beginnings. 3 months after what company employees now called the Broderick incident, Hargrove Industries had transformed. The sleek glass headquarters still dominated the skyline, but inside, the power structure had shifted significantly. Richard sat in the newly designed open-concept executive suite, reviewing quarterly projections with a team that now included former junior employees elevated, based on merit rather than politics. "The Henderson contract is outperforming projections by 17%, noted Zoe Daniels, previously a mid-level analyst, now head of client relations. "Patricia specifically requested our team for their expansion into European markets." Richard nodded appreciatively. "Excellent work, everyone. Let's wrap up for today." As the team dispersed, Richard checked his watch, 6:15 p.m. For the first time in years, he was leaving at a reasonable hour, honoring his promise to Deborah to prioritize their marriage. Their relationship remained a work in progress, but weekly therapy and genuine effort had created space for healing. In the elevator, Richard encountered Eleanor Walsh, who now served as chairperson of the restructured board. "Heading home already?" she asked with raised eyebrows. "New policy," he replied. "No emails after 7. No weekend work unless absolutely necessary." Eleanor smiled approvingly. "And how's Vanessa adjusting to her new role?" The question was innocent but loaded. After declining reinstatement as his assistant, Vanessa had accepted a newly created position as Ethics and Compliance Director, reporting directly to the board rather than to Richard. "She's thorough," Richard answered carefully. "3 executives have complained about her excessive oversight this week alone." "Good," Eleanor said. "That's exactly why we needed her." Across town, Vanessa was concluding her day by signing off on new company-wide transparency protocols. Her office, once a small space near Richard's, was now a corner suite reflecting her elevated status. A knock at her door revealed Thomas Fleming. "The committee approved your recommendations unanimously," he informed her. Though some members found the personal relationship disclosure requirements invasive. "That's precisely the point," Vanessa replied. "Transparency removes the power of secrets." After Thomas left, Vanessa allowed herself a moment of reflection. The past months had brought professional advancement beyond her expectations, but also clarity about personal boundaries. The brief connection with Richard had crystallized something important. She deserved relationships uncomplicated by power dynamics or professional entanglements. Her phone chimed with a message from her sister. "Grace, dinner still on? Bringing that architect I told you about." Vanessa smiled, gathering her things. Her mother's warnings about workplace romances had proven valuable, if not in the way intended. Some boundaries existed for good reasons. At home, Richard greeted Deborah with a kiss as he entered their renovated brownstone. "How was your day?" she asked, genuinely interested in a way that had been missing for years. "Productive," he replied. "Yours?" "My exhibition opens next week," she reminded him, gesturing toward her art studio where canvases awaited transport to the gallery. After years of putting her painting aside for fundraisers and corporate events, Deborah had returned to her first passion. "I've blocked the entire day," Richard assured her. "Nothing will interfere." Later that evening, Vanessa sat across from Michael, Grace's architect friend, finding herself engaged in conversation that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or corporate strategy. "Do you miss working directly with the CEO?" Michael asked innocently. Vanessa considered the question. "I miss certain aspects of my old position," she answered honestly. "But I've discovered I'm more effective when I'm not someone's right hand, when I can be my own person with my own authority." As midnight approached, Richard stood on his terrace overlooking the city. His phone showed a news alert. Broderick Partners was filing for bankruptcy following the criminal indictments. Jonathan Mercer had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony. Richard closed the alert, instead opening his calendar where Deborah's exhibition was prominently blocked for next week. Below it, another entry read, Ethics Committee Quarterly Review, V. Powell presenting. He smiled slightly. Their paths would continue to cross professionally, with the appropriate boundaries now firmly in place. The momentary connection they'd shared had catalyzed necessary changes for both of them, leading them not toward each other, but toward better versions of themselves. Richard turned off his phone, another new habit, and went inside to join his wife. Across the city, Vanessa did the same, choosing present moments over what might have been, finding unexpected contentment in the new beginnings that sometimes arise from endings.